With its green hills, Warthog rides and Forerunner architecture, and the fact it's the game's second level, for a time, Halo 4's Requiem feels like an experience in the mould of Combat Evolved's Halo. It certainly starts out strong, but whether it sticks the landing or not is definitely up for debate. The mission begins with Master Chief plummeting towards the Forerunner world he'll soon come to know as Requiem. If you've played most other Halo titles prior, you'll recognise these scenes as being part of a rich tradition for the series. Combat Evolved's second mission begins with the lifeboat you're in crash landing. In 2, Chief's second mission opens with his Pelican suffering a somewhat bumpy landing. 3 features similar, although granted on that occasion it's right at the start of the campaign, and even ODST's first few moments involve the rookie's drop into New Mombasa going wrong. If I were one of Master Chief's colleagues, based on all the evidence, I'd advise him to avoid heights wherever possible. The discussion between he and Cortana which follows is the first proper chinwag the pair have about her impending rampancy. AIs begin to deteriorate after 7 years, and Cortana has been in service for 8. Chief believes there may be a solution if the pair can reach Cortana's creator, Dr. Catherine Halsey, but she remains unconvinced.
Halsey.
Chief.
We need to find Halsey.
Chief, please.
She made you. She can fix you.
I won't recover from rampancy, Chief.
If we can just get back to Earth and find Halsey, she can fix this.
Don't make a girl a promise you can't keep.
That final line is also a callback to dialogue at the end of Halo 2's Gravemind.
Chief, when you get to Earth, good luck.
After I'm through with truth.
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
And it's spoken by Halsey herself during Halo Legends episode The Package.
We make our own luck, but I'll always be there when you need me.
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
Given Cortana was created using a copy of Halsey's brain, it's nice justification for her repeated use of the phrase. In amongst the debris, information can be gleaned from various sources. A transmission from the Covenant mentions the Prometheans, another broadcasts only the word Didact, both fine, but it's the third which leaves me struggling to contain my disbelief. A single human terminal can be interacted with, which contains a snippet of Halsey talking about Cortana.
The interesting factor here isn't that H1 disabled the viral termination code I implanted in her matrix. These metrics imply its success wasn't just unlikely, but that even the accepted 7-year life cycle estimates may not apply.
Look, I know it's a video game, and concessions do have to be made at the altar of storytelling, but I find it hilariously convenient that the one functioning bit of tech nearby just so happens to elaborate on exactly what Master Chief and Cortana were talking about mere seconds earlier. Narrative misgivings aside, it's hard to deny that the areas you travel through during most of Requiem, but especially here at the start, are breathtaking. The canyon, filled with the shells of once proud ships, is a gorgeous way to begin proceedings, and it gets even more spectacular as you round a corner and are greeted by towering Forerunner structures suspended in mid-air, surrounded by natural beauty. When talking about 4's opening level, I spoke of what a good job 343 did graphically with the Forward Unto Dawn's gloomy corridors, and here we're given evidence they are able to handle exterior environments just as well too. A lot of people have issues with the game's art style and aesthetic, myself included, but in terms of the game being a raw graphical showcase, there are a few titles released during the same period which can match it, indoors or out. I do wonder whether that push for what was, at the time, peerless graphical fidelity came at a cost though when it comes to the more spacious settings. Requiem's first encounter actually flatters to deceive. It's reminiscent of how Bungie would construct their larger areas, with space to play around with in the middle and tracks round the outside letting you move between firefights with ease. The problem is that it's the exception that proves the rule. Other than this example, and perhaps one or two others later in the campaign, there generally seems to be a trade-off which is particularly noticeable when 4's scale increases. On the one hand, you get some of the best graphics the 7th generation of consoles has to offer. On the other, it certainly seems to me as if level design and AI took a massive hit to accommodate the extra Xbox 360 horsepower being needed elsewhere. Whenever a battle involves vehicles, pay attention to how the areas they appear in are set up. A few examples are playing on screen now. They may sometimes have several lanes, that is, paths leading through them, but most of the time you're encouraged to move in a near straight line through narrow corridors. When I think of the best vehicle sections Halo has to offer, I think of the Silent Cartographer, the Ark, New Alexandria and the like, levels which utilise space in varied ways to provide interesting and unique challenges. In Halo 4, you'll pretty much always be driving down rigidly constructed paths which allow little room for expression, while enemies spawn directly ahead of you. As mentioned, this early portion is a better example of how it should have been handled, although it's still not perfect, and it's a shame from here the game actually mostly regresses rather than building on this early promise. In terms of AI, the Covenant in Halo 4 are incredibly stupid. They do still react to your actions every now and then and might trick you once or twice into thinking they're the same they've always been. However, much of the time they barely move around at all and seem unable to use even basic tactics. So often they'll either stand still directly in front of you or lazily strafe slightly left or right, and that's about it. You should forget about them doing anything beyond short to medium range too, because those further away usually show even less of a willingness to engage. Granted, they are more emotive than the Prometheans you'll soon be battling, but that's a pretty low bar to begin with. In short, across both level design and AI, I wonder whether Halo 4 sacrifices too much of the series' brains for beauty. After picking up your first armor ability, Active Camouflage, which I usually find to be utterly useless, you arrive in a large room housing Requiem's cartographer and hear mention of the Mantle of Responsibility for the first time.
What does it say?
Guardianship for all living things lies with those whose evolution is most complete. The Mantle of Responsibility shelters all. Very interesting.
Maybe, but it won't get us home.
You then have to cut your way through several Covenant squads on the way to a pair of power cores which need restoring to bring the cartographer back online. With that done and dusted, Chief and Cortana attempt to locate the UNSC Infinity, which has been regularly transmitting throughout the mission.
It doesn't want to triangulate Infinity's signal. Oh wait. I got it.
That can't be right. Scan again.
We've already passed through one layer of the planet's surface. It's not crazy to think that someone else made it deeper inside than we did.
You mean the planet's hollow?
I really like the look of the cartographer itself too, which is very much a shinier version of that found in previous titles. On the topic of old becoming new, you next need to make your way across a very familiar style of bridge you'll have encountered many times during Halo Combat Evolved, and especially during Assault on the Control Room. Before I talk about the sequence itself, I've a quick, probably quite stupid thought that is most likely meaningless, one that only crossed my mind, I think, when I arrived here during my third playthrough of Requiem. It's weird how much of the level seems to rapidly cycle through different facets of Combat Evolved's missions in order. Think about it, the Pillar of Autumn tasks you with exploring the cruiser of the same name, and you spend a few brief moments at the start of Requiem doing the same, albeit within the remains of the Forward Unto Dawn. Next comes Halo, which involves green hills and warthogs that, as discussed earlier, is a lot like the part which follows here. Truth and Reconciliation often encourages stealth and regularly offers up active camouflage, which you pick up as an armor ability during Requiem, and in the Silent Cartographer you track down the Cartographer, identical to your recent midpoint objective. Last but not least, Assault on the Control Room features a ton of bridges with an upper and lower level, very similar to the one Master Chief has arrived at by this point in the mission. That seems to be where the similarities end, but do let me know if you think they continue. Again, I must also emphasise that this isn't some clever theory about Requiem structure I'm trying to push, it's simply something which jumped out at me that I felt was worth mentioning. Right, back to events at hand. If you jump off the elevator which ferries you down to the bridge, Cortana will comment.
Scouts, fortifying the bridge below. Stay sharp.
Would it have killed you to use the elevator?
And it's always worth hanging around areas for too long or doing the unexpected, as something 343 does really well across the campaign is including incidental dialogue it's easy to miss. It is present in Bungie's entries too, but 4 and 5 especially contain a huge amount of it, and I always enjoy hearing a line or two I never knew existed during repeat playthroughs. The bridge is by far and away Requiem's best slice of uninterrupted gameplay. Enemies immediately rush you at ground level, phantoms drop off reinforcements in the distance, and banshees swoop down to fire at you. There's plenty of room to maneuver, there's a degree of verticality, and aesthetically it holds up much better than many featured later in the campaign, with bright colours and natural landscapes featured predominantly around the edges, helping soften the futuristic but visually overly busy Forerunner structures. You can even hop in a banshee and take to the skies with relative ease, as opposed to trying to take down one without damaging it during assault on the control room, which I was never any good at. This whole section takes something we've seen before and expands upon it, making it bigger and arguably better, while retaining crucial elements of the part it's based on. In a way, it's a frustrating thing to witness, as like the short Warthog sequence after Requiem's opening, it's a demonstration that at times 343 were capable of leveraging Bungie's work relatively successfully. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen enough, and examples of it become rarer and rarer the further into 4 you progress. Bridge cleared, there's a final tussle with the Covenant to contend with. The first part is another example of 343, I think, attempting to shoehorn vehicles into their level design philosophy rather than building an area around the vehicles instead. There are a couple of ghosts you can hijack, but there's little room to maneuver, which means using one of them isn't particularly satisfying. It's an on-foot section with vehicles jammed into the space for no real reason, and it doesn't work. My biggest bugbear though is with the pair of hunters you meet outside the entrance to the gigantic Forerunner spire. Hunters in Halo 4 are a letdown. They don't feature often, they're visually unappealing, and there's nothing which separates them gameplay-wise from those in other games. In fact, they're a bit of a pushover. To be fair, I understand why that's the case. Reach's hunters were absolute nightmares, walking behemoths with the ability to shred you in an instant, and so 343 perhaps overreacted a tad when balancing their own iteration, which is completely understandable. Also, their efforts after in 5 and Infinite are both great, so the hunters here I consider only to be a temporary blip. After defeating the beasts with the help of more sentinels, Chief and Cortana receive another brief transmission from the Infinity.
While you were busy, I managed to clear up another transmission from Infinity.
Sounded like he said artifact.
I wonder if it's related to whatever the Covenant are after.
Heading inside, they are then confronted by an enemy you won't have seen yet, which appears as if from nowhere, and as a handy portal appears offering them a convenient escape route, Requiem concludes.
Cortana.
I'm picking up unknown energy signatures.
Where?
This can't be right.
Set a waypoint out of the tower. Cortana?
How did... Quick! Into the portal! Chief, go!
As an introduction to Halo 4's new setting, Requiem doesn't do a bad job at all. Its visuals are gorgeous, with it striking a much better balance between the natural and man-made, or should I say Forerunner-made, than later levels do. It includes some solid world building that begins to set the stage for later events well, and its encounters are generally solid, with the bridge battle a notable highlight. That being said, it does also show the first signs of issues that become more pronounced the further into Halo 4 you progress. Vehicles are present but are often underutilised, with only the circular area towards the mission's opening feeling like one you might have encountered in Bungie's efforts. Enemy AI is also frighteningly dumb, with most hunters especially feeling like pale imitations of their former selves. Looking at Requiem in isolation, it's a decent crack at a level set on an entirely new Forerunner world. Looking at it as part of the rest of Halo 4's campaign, however, it is, in my view, also where the first cracks begin to show. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you enjoyed it, do think about liking, subscribing and sharing your thoughts, and hopefully I'll catch you all again soon.